Welcome, friends. We are here today to honor and celebrate the life of Mike West. This meeting will be recorded. We ask that you speak clearly and give your name before you give your message. When you come into a friend's meeting, you are entering a meeting for worship. Quakers meet in silence, in quiet expectation for the Spirit which moves among us to change us, to teach us, and to comfort us. We can be inspired to rise and briefly share a message about Mike, allowing a space between messages so we can reflect on what has been spoken. For those online, please remain muted unless you want to speak. Then unmute yourself. I will close the meeting. Now let us settle into silence as we remember Mike West and what his life has meant to us.
It's very difficult to reflect on a 35-year-long friendship, but I have done a lot of that in the last month. Mike was a dear friend. We spent many hours in the woods with pursuing wildlife. And Mike almost always had a bag with him to collect garbage because he was intent on leaving the place better than when he found it. I think that's really the message of Mike's life that I've taken, his intent to really leave people in a better place than he found them. He was extremely committed to individuals, to relationships. He was honest. He had deep and long friends in his family, in his, from college. He had a lot of college friends he would tell me that he continued to do things with. He had very few people that he found objectionable because he seemed to appreciate something in everyone. I must, though, acknowledge that there's one person that I have heard for 35 years his deep dislike, and that was Roger Stone, who was was a student at the same time at Harvard College. But other than that, Mike had a deep commitment, as I said, to friendship. He especially had a deep commitment to Dell, and it was really the, I think, foundational love of his life. To be able to be a parent, and I thought there was such a wonderful experience of parenting with Suzanne. And to be at this place where he was feeling so comfortable with where Dell is in the position that she had gotten to in life. It was very touching. I think my feeling that I fundamentally had is that Mike has left the world a better place. He certainly has left me in a better place.
Hi, okay. I was Mike's niece. And when I think about my uncle, I think a lot about one of my earliest memories of him, which was when I was, I think, 7 or 8, and my mom took me to a nature survival camp, which I think was probably inspired by my uncle in some way. And she got at this camp both mononucleosis and pneumonia at the same time. So we had to leave, as you might imagine. And Uncle Mike drove, I think, several hours in the middle of the night to come and get us, and brought us back to stay at his home until my mom had recovered enough to take me home. And, you know, I was a little kid. I was a very anxious little kid, especially about illnesses. And my mom was very sick. So I really should have remembered this as a terrifying time for me. But my uncle made me feel so safe. I remember staying at his house as just fun and lovely. I wasn't scared. I think my mom and him had a fight about her throwing out expired hummus while we were staying there. Oh, it was a different trip. Okay. He felt that the hummus could have gotten more use out of it. But he took me on a canoe trip. He caught turtles and showed them to me. And well, I don't remember more of that trip. I remember what a wonderful Uncle Mike was to me as a kid. He was so good with kids and so happy to be showing me things to be excited about in the world. He taught me to look closely at nature, to think deeply about the world around me. I have a fascination with mushrooms as an adult that I think is because of him and the things he pointed out when I was a kid. Taught me to look under logs and to care about leaving nature as good as or neater than I found it. And if there's one thing I regret, it's that I didn't have more time or avail myself of more opportunities to come to know my uncle as an adult. But I'm really grateful for the time I got. Some of you who knew Mike well might know that he struggled with depression at some points in his life. I also struggle with depression pretty frequently. And there was a point where my uncle was staying with my mother at the same time I was, because both of us were going through sort of a difficult time mental health wise. And we didn't really talk about it, but I've thought about that time a lot in the time since then, and especially in the time since Mike's death, as I've heard more about his life, because there have been times in my life where I have wondered about the things that make my life worth living and continuing with. And I know that there were times in Mike's life where he had those same kinds of doubts. And seeing the effect he had on all of the people who knew him, the people in this room, the people in Costa Rica, seeing what an enormously rich and generous life he built and the impact that he is going to leave on, I think, all of us for the rest of our lives. I really hope I can live a life like that, and he gave me a lot of hope that I might be able to. And I'm just really grateful that I got to know him.
My name is Andrea Taylor, and I also have a Mike rescue me in the middle of the night story. But that's not the one I'm going to tell. The one I want to share is, come up here, is about his friendship with my late husband, whose memorial service actually was 5 years to the day today. So my late husband's name was Bert Schneeweiss, and he was totally immobilized with chronic progressive MS and was in the Cook's nursing home, which is not terribly far from here. And shortly after Mike retired, I think he was kind of looking for things to do. So our friend Lois suggested that he might go and visit Bert in the nursing home. And so I think Mike wasn't quite sure what to expect and thought that Bert, since he couldn't move anything and couldn't scratch his own nose, might also be, mentally, cognitively not quite there. So the first day he went to visit him, he showed up. I don't know if you know Mike's joke book, but it was pretty lame. I actually got the benefit of it myself the night he rescued me in the hospital. Anyway, so he goes to Cook's home with this book of jokes and very quickly discovered that Bert, in fact, cognitively was all there. And they shared an incredible love and knowledge of science and curiosity. Bert was compassionate, kind, and very curious. And so for the next, I'm not sure, maybe the next couple of years before Mike went to Costa Rica, they had regular visits. And they talked science, and they talked chemistry, and they talked politics, and they talked sex, I'm told. I wasn't privy to it all, but the most wonderful, deep, abiding friendship developed. And I can't tell you how grateful I am. And I will remember this forever. And our friend Catherine, who does not live far from the Kutz home, would also show up, and the three of them would just have a wonderful time together. And because of, Mike was not afraid at all to take Bert into the dining room and help feed him, because he couldn't feed himself. And because he was so tall, he, of course, everybody noticed. All the CNAs at Kutz home thought he was just wonderful and very handsome. So At any rate, I will remember him fondly forever and ever. And I will say, just very briefly, a few years into this, I had a bad fall coming out of his nursing home at night, and I ended up in Christiana Hospital, lying in the emergency room. And about 3 a.m, I was still lying in the emergency room, and I was all of a sudden I started to cry because I was like, I'm lying here by myself. So who do I call? Who's going to come at 3 a.m? Mike came with his jokes. So when they finally took me for an MRI at 5, I said, Mike, you can go home now, but thank you. And what a gift, what a gift. It's just, what can I say? You're blessed that you had him in your lives.
So I know it's contrary to Quaker tradition, but I made notes because I wanted to remember the things I really wanted to say about my brother. I'm Karen Littlefield, and I have the great good fortune of being Mike's little sister. He was my mentor and my protector from the day I was born until the day he died. And as an adult, he was also my friend. Mike did struggle, but no matter what was going on in his own life, I could count on him to be there for me and my family. He walked me down the aisle with my stepfather, one on either side. It's great getting through the door. At my wedding to my beloved also, Mike, and he would insist that I called him brother. And my husband to disambiguate when they were together. And he also advised me during those unsure moments every parent faces. To the extent I have managed to be a good parent for my daughter Kay, I owe that to my brother. He did not have the best parenting models, but he showed me how well it worked with Dell, and I knew that if I could do half the job with Kay that he did with Dell, that I would be doing great. He taught me the importance of fostering emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence. He taught me that children, and he said to me, are just people with less experience. He taught me to be present with my daughter and how to hear beyond words. And I'm grateful beyond words for the relationship I have with her that I owe to him. I'm also Mike's executor and tax preparer. I knew of his generosity from the donations he claimed on his tax return, but only from attending his memorial and at the Monteverde Quaker meeting and talking with his friends afterwards did I learn how extensively his generous spirit guided his life down there and I think everywhere from what I'm hearing now. I was really moved by the words of the former director of the Monteverde Spring School and wanted to share them here with her permission so that others can get a little sense of Costa Rica Mike if you didn't get a chance to. We're gonna play that in a minute here, but it's still a little quiet and it might not be as clear on the Zoom recording. So if you can't hear it, you can also access that entire memorial via a link in the chat. And in case you can't access the chat, because I know some of them are older, it's tinyurl.com, capital WEST, capital M, capital V for Monteverde, capital M, Memorial, MEMORIAL. Only the W, the M, V, and the M are capitalized. Sue's piece is the first few minutes of that, so I'm going to ask Tom to kindly play that right now. And it's on the screen if you want to see her talking.
I'm Sue, for those of you who know me. I think that I was probably Mike's first friend when he came here, and certainly his confidant for many of the years that he spent here. As you may or may not know, Mike worked for DuPont for his career and worked with chemicals. Mike also spent a lot of his life trying to tame the chemicals in his brain. He loved the woods, he loved Quakerism. We connected as Unitarian Universalists as well. For all kinds of reasons, there were some people here who misunderstood Mike. But if you had the privilege of getting to know him well, you would know him as fiercely loyal, protective. He was so proud of you. What you probably don't know is how incredibly generous Mike West was. For the years I was director here, he established the Director's Discretionary Fund, which was unknown to all of you. But it was consistently funded by Mike's checks. And it allowed me to buy a bed for a student who was sleeping on the floor. It allowed me to buy the first pair of real sneakers one of our students had so that he could run in the Antorcha as a senior in high school. His first pair of new sneakers. I bought supplies for teachers. I bought food for families. I bought clothes for students. And this went on for years, all the years I was here. When there was a conflict about Ulysses and I were slowly paying for our funeral plots here. Once a month, Ulysses would clean the cemetery, and we would put that money aside for our plots. And then we got to the end, and Ulysses couldn't clean the cemetery anymore because he didn't have Factura Electronica and all kinds of things. And then the accountant said, no, you still owe $200 and something because of the tipo de cambio, the exchange rate. Mike was pissed off. And so he wrote a check and he sent us a note and he said, you now can rest in peace. I also want to bring a message from Kate, who respected Mike's wishes to not come back and be with him in this time. But she wants everyone to know that Mike was, I think she's here, the love of his life. And she's so grateful for the time that they were able to enjoy together and to be together. She loves him so much. She's, I think, here in the meeting, but said it would be hard for her to speak because there are just too many tears. Mike loved nature and felt probably the most comfortable on a trail hiking by himself, often navigating uncharted territory with his complex GPS system. But the other place that he felt most comfortable was in the basement of Bar Amigos. I remember getting called on the carpet by some of the leadership in the Quaker family as director of this school because they found out that I was hanging out at Bar Amigos in the basement with Mike and other people, and maybe that wasn't that appropriate for the director of a school. But with his help and others, we established an amazing group of pool players that came from the Institute CIEE, the Creativa, the Escuela de los Amigos, and the community. And we spent 3 or 4 years in an amazing pool league that met once a week and brought together this hugely diverse group of individuals. Mike waited for the moments that I would have to leave the country to do work so that Ulysses would be alone. Because that meant he could play pool with Ulysses. The last time that I left and Ulysses was left behind in Monteverde, the hours and hours and hours of practicing that Mike worked with Camacho almost every other day in Bar Amigos paid off. And when Ulysses played with him the last time, Mike beat him 3 games. And that's quite an accomplishment. So I want to extend an invitation to anyone who wants to join us at 1 o'clock at Bar Amigos. We will be playing pool in Mike's honor. We will be toasting with chili guaro because he would buy a bottle of chili guaro and store it in the refrigerator in Bar Amigos so that anyone who wanted a drink could have fun. Mike always paid for pool. We'd give him the ride and he'd pay for everything.
It's a little unusual, but Mike's life in Delaware and California meant the world to him, and so did the Costa Rica piece. So I just wanted to share that, a little touch of that flavor that made me so glad to hear about the relationships and the kindness that he did down there. But I also have a couple more things to share on my own behalf, so. Mike, sorry. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. We're getting it. Yeah. Sorry. Mike also helped build my quirky sense of humor, which is a family trait. I think I've heard that, quirky is the word I've heard used most lately to describe it around Mike. And our entire family can sing Tom Lair's "We Will All Go Together When We Go," which refers to funerals and nuclear war, and includes the lyrics for "The bomb that drops on you gets your friends and neighbors too. There'll be nobody left behind to grieve." And as strange as it sounds, I've been really comforting myself lately, singing that. You see, it's really, and thinking about how we've all sung it together over years in both good and trying times. Also, Mike had my husband and me laugh as absolute spectacles when I looked around and saw the horror on the faces of the people in the cafe, as we laughed so hard as he described how he and his young friends set fire to a local field in California by tossing lit matches over their shoulders in the dry field and then when the fire truck came, my brother and his friends blamed the fire on a group of unnamed older boys. And the firefighters commended the actual perpetrators and awarded them junior firefighter pins. Later, my mom found the jar with the matches because Mike would not litter, and the rags. And she figured it out. And she marched Mike down to that fire station to confess and to return his pin. There's a similar story about me in shoplifting. My mom took every opportunity to model integrity and to require that, not perfection, from all of us. Mike took that message to heart at that time and modeled those values to me consistently. If he made a mistake or owed a debt, he owned that and he did his absolute best to repay it or to make amends. His modeling was so strong that to this day, I am always shocked when somebody lies or denies facts that are clear, because Mike taught me how much easier it is in the long run to just do the right thing, to own up to our human foibles and just do our best. I'm so grateful that he and my mom gave me honesty and integrity as core values. I think too that he always believed the best of people, and although sometimes I think his trust was occasionally misplaced, he erred on the side of that trust, and I believe he was happier for it. He was also insatiably curious and data-driven. He taught me, as Kay said, to look under logs in the forest and rocks in the tide pools and to see what was under them. And he taught me early on to put them back so that when I was done looking, the life underneath them was protected. He taught me to look at the data, check the references, read the studies, and see whether or not the conclusions were well supported and peer reviewed. He taught me that being a scientist means being open to new data that might show your prior assumptions were wrong. He gave me the gift of being a lifelong learner and perpetually open to updating my fact set and changing my mind. He taught me to believe in evidence whether or not it was what I hoped for. He also showed me that nature is everywhere. I lived in Los Angeles for a long time, and it was the one place on earth I swore I would never live, and there's some karmic justice in that. But when I was feeling disconnected from nature in Los Angeles, Mike went hiking with me under graffiti-strewn rocks, and he showed me the owl pellets there. He found a blind snake in the vacant lot where they burned trash next to my mom's place in Mexico. He was the one I trusted to tell me if a mushroom was edible and to show me the characteristics that differentiated it from its inedible or toxic counterpart. And I'm a little scared to think about foraging without him. I also owe my brother and his ex-wife and co-parent Suzanne West the lucky fact that I have Del West in my life. Del is an inspiration to me and extraordinarily kind, wickedly smart, deeply funny, and a loving person that I feel so lucky to be his ears aunt. Mike and Suzanne co-parented beautifully and have maintained a lifelong friendship. Suzanne and Freeman were both unfailing sources of support during difficult times in Mike's life, and I've leaned on them both heavily for support in this difficult time of his death. And I want to thank you and Lois as well, who was also absolutely there for all of those. I think of you two as a collective unit, but I know that the rest of the universe doesn't. For your unwavering support of me, of Mike, and of my family through the years. And I want to thank you, Del, for being the person you are and our in-family IT resource. I also want to recognize Mike's Costa Rican family, Tarcisio and Marianella, and their family. Mike lived with them after he moved down in 2017 in Costa Rica in their house. I think they intend to speak here, but I also want to share one story Mike told me about his living there. He said when he lived, he called Tarcisio Poppy. And Tarcisio is much shorter than Mike and also 5 years younger. But it didn't stop him, and they had that kind of relationship. And about Marianella, Mike's told me so many times about her wonderful kindness and the meals she made and how they would chat her in Spanish and like doing his best. And he said that it was just like being a kid living there because he would get up in the morning, Marianella would have made his breakfast, he would take and bag his lunch and he would take it on his bike and he would ride to school where he volunteered at the Monteverde Fred School. And then when he was done, he would ride home. And as an adult, he took a nap. But then he went out and hiked and Marianella made dinner and Mike did the dishes. And it's just really made me happy to see the family he built down there. I tried really hard to convince Mike to retire in Oregon, but he was in the right place for his best years in Costa Rica, surrounded by all that nature and all that love and the pool and the friends. And I want to say that Mike spent his last night playing games with his family before he passed peacefully in his bed in the next morning. So, and then lastly, I want to say, both in this meeting and through other stories of the Monteverde Friends meeting, I've also been struck by the deep impact Mike had on the lives of so many people. as with my daughter, if I can do, half as well, I will feel I have a life well lived. His friend Eva, who was also his coach in Spanish, said it to me perfectly when she said, "The hole left in my heart, the hole Mike left in my heart will never close." She said it in Spanish, but I translated. "Thank you, my brother. You were unique and irreplaceable, and you will be deeply missed by me and my others." Thank you.
Suzanne West. As Karen said, Mike and I were married from 1986 to 1996. We managed to be pretty decent co-parents during that time and, remained friendly and friends. There's many stories that I could tell, but I just want to tell you a little story about the day after he died. I had gotten the news and was feeling sad, and I was taking a walk in this little bit of woods near our suburban neighborhood in North Carolina where we live now. And there's a little kind of red clay, running red with clay, little streamlet. And there's like a flat wooden bridge that goes across it. And very often when I'm crossing that, I'll see little frogs, like little black frogs, but I don't even really see them. I just startle them and they jump in. So I never really get a good look at them. But on the day after he died, I was walking there and there was this big green frog just sitting right in the middle and didn't seem to care that I was there. And I'd never seen that before. And I sort of carefully tiptoed across the bridge and didn't get startled. And then I went down a little way and then I came back and it was still there. And I was like, "Oh, hi, Mike." Oh, you get it? Because if he was going to come back, and give a sign from beyond the grave, like he would be a frog, right? Or a mushroom or a hawk. Or anyway, it gave me comfort because I just felt like it was kind of a sign like, he's okay. He's passed into nature, which is where he belongs, what he was merged with, and like in spite of the struggles that he had with his mental health and other things, I feel like there was just this very rooted quality that he had in terms of staying connected. Staying connected to nature, staying connected to all the people, having integrity, doing the right thing. And so I just very much appreciate the time that he was here with us. And next time you see a frog, say hi.
Hi, this is John Corey. At what point do those of us on the line roll in here?
Go ahead and speak.
Okay. Um, my my time with Mike goes back a little over 50 years. I was one of his 3 friends at Harvey Mudd College, and we met freshman year, and the 4 of us just hit it off very quickly. We played bridge, we played spades, we played hearts, all very competitive, of course. And he taught us a card game called Setback, which we played every time we got together, you know, in a hotel, in a restaurant, so it was very easy. There was a number of things Mike taught me as a friend. One of the big ones, there's only 2 people involved in a bet, a fool and a thief. And he showed us why he wasn't a fool. So that's something I will always remember, and I'm much more cautious now when taking a bet. He also showed me, because I too like nature, we did a lot of hiking, to take it slower. If you're just hiking from A to B, you're missing so much on the route itself. Slow down, look at the little things. And I was the same way. You pick up your trash. Even when we were hiking in the Sierras in 2019 at one of our annual get-togethers, we both came out carrying trash from our hike, because you leave the place better than it was. His curiosity, I think insatiable is the correct word for that. And just kind of a quick story that sort of highlights that. One of our get-togethers, we're out to dinner. Mike says, "What do you guys think is the best way to boil an egg?" That turned into a 2-hour discussion in the restaurant. Everyone around us probably thought we were nuts, because it was a scientific discussion. At the end of 2 hours, we all agreed, well, Bob, Dave, and I, that we just didn't have enough data. We were guessing. And that's when we found out, as Mike started trickling data to us, that he had spent months testing and researching the answer to this. And he helped us by slowly giving us the data, reach the same conclusion. Although we did bring up some questions to some of his data, whether it was good enough or extensive enough to actually support his findings, or if there was still some error bars there. So Mike will be sorely missed. We will continue to meet, the 3 of us. But it will not be the same.
John, I just want to insert that in Mike's memorial slideshow, I found that spreadsheet. And there were like 50 eggs and pictures of eggs and pictures of cut eggs. And it's in the slideshow.
Yeah, I saw that already, and I think he did over 60 eggs. And he would boil them and then cut them and examine them and all that.
Oh, thank you guys so much.
Are there other people online who would like to comment or have any message to bring forward?
Yeah, hello. We are Mike's Monteverde and Costa Rica family. And my dad wrote a poem during this week, and we would like to share it. I translated it. So if it doesn't make sense, it's probably because of the translation. But we're gonna read it first in Spanish and then in English. And yeah, it's about Mike. So no sé si quieres empezar.
Pues para nosotros Miguelito fue y sigue siendo y seguirá siendo por siempre uno más de nuestra familia, sino de sangre, pero siempre unidos por la luz del corazón.
Well, before the poem, he would like to share some words, and he was just saying how Mike will always be part of our family, and he will always be in our hearts. And he left a strong presence here.
Para decir todo nuestro cariño y nuestro recuerdo, hemos escrito un poema que primero voy a leerlo en español para expresar todo nuestro cariño en nuestro propio lenguaje. Luego mi hijo va a traducirlo en inglés.
Yeah, so to demonstrate our appreciation, our love for Mike, we've written a poem that he will first read in Spanish and I will read later in English.
Miguelito por siempre. Nuestro Miguelito, un día de enero, vino con el viento del norte. No buscaba nada, pero encontró familia. Nos trajo su ejemplo de una vida simple, sencilla, desposeída de todo deseo, vida sin apegos, y por eso él fue dueño de la libertad. Fue amado y supo amar. Hizo del silencio un amigo profundo. Fue siempre amigable, siempre dispuesto, listo a servir. Anduvo en la montaña, lidió con los vientos, convivió con los bosques que él tanto amó. Sus huellas quedaron grabadas entre alfombrados senderos de un verde esmeralda. Mágicos senderos llenos de sorpresas, de curiosos hongos, libélulas transparentes, hermosos quetzales, que a su paso hoy salen para recibirlo. Encantos de monos, guatusas, pisotes, algarabía escondida detrás de cada hoja, cada flor que le sonríe en silencio. La vida silvestre del paraíso verde entona su canto. Todos los matices, todos los tonos, las venas del bosque abren paso al príncipe. El bosque está ufano. Hileras de mariposas encabezadas por tres magníficas morfos de un azul profundo, brillantes como la pureza misma. Preceden los senderos por donde el príncipe avanza con su paso firme, la sonrisa amplia, su tez serena, con mirada humilde. Y llena de luz, todo lo que ve, lo envuelve todo. Se absorbe, se funde con los elementos en un solo amor. En regocijo profundo pasan las horas, Pasan los días, los meses, los años. Ahora nuestro Miguelito es parte del agua, la tierra, el aire y el fuego. Habita en las alturas de higuerones milenarios. Vive viene en las mañanas, las tardes, las noches. Permanece jugando feliz entre nubes o entre neblina del bosque nuboso del universo entero. Miguelito querido, nuestro corazón es un bosque palpitante para ti.
Miguelito forever. One January day, our Miguelito came with the north wind. He wasn't looking for anything special, but he found a family. He brought with him an example of a simple and noble life, stripped of all desire. Living without attachments, he was free. He was loved and knew how to love. He made a deep friend of silence and was always friendly, always willing, ready to serve. He walked in the mountains, he dealt with the winds. He lived in the forests that he loved so much. His footprints were left engraved among carpeted paths of emerald green moss. Magical trails full of surprises, curious mushrooms, transparent dragonflies, beautiful quetzals, that in his path today continue to receive him. The charm of monkeys, agoutis, coatis, ecstasy hidden behind each leaf. Each flower smiled at him in silence. The wildlife of the green paradise sung its song. All the nuances, the tones, the plains of the forest made way for the prince. The forest was proud. Rows of butterflies headed by 3 magnificent deep blue morphos, bright as purity itself, all preceding the paths where the prince advanced with his firm step, his wide smile. His complexion was serene, with a humble look and full of all-encompassing light. His splendor is absorbed, it merges with the elements in a single love. In deep joy, the hours pass, the days pass, the months, the years. Now our Miguelito is part of water, earth, air, and fire. He lives in the heights of ancient fig trees. He comes with the mornings, the afternoons, the nights. He remains playing happily in the fog cloud forests of the universe. Miguelito querido, our heart is always beating for you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate. Muchas gracias. La poema es estupendo. Muchas gracias. Te amo mucho. Mike was the joy of my life, the love of my life. We had so much fun together. We were like little kids. We'd climb over logs. He'd help pull me over logs because I couldn't make it. We'd climb under logs. We'd look all over for things. It was amazing going for hikes with him because he taught me too to stop and take it slowly. I'd be going along and all of a sudden he'd say, Kate, Kate, come back. So I'd walk back and he would have found an amazing flower or an amazing little insect, anything. It was so wonderful to be with him. He was such an amazing light in this world. He touched so many souls. We would always say to each other that I love you now, forever and always. And I will. I still talk to him all the time. I know that he's still around. And Tarcisio, you got it. He is out there having so much fun. He is walking through the woods and just dancing with the trees and having a great time. I see him doing that all the time now. He's free. He's so happy and so filled with joy and just looking over all of us and smiling. We would laugh all the time about his dimples. And he would say, oh, how handsome he was with his dimples. I'd go, yes, you are. So I don't know. I'm trying to heal the hole that's in my heart. And I know it's slowly getting better. But I just look at all the pictures of how much fun we had. And everything you guys have said, he was that and more. He was an amazing, amazing human being, full of love, full of joy, so generous, so kind, so loving, so protective. And I really, really miss him. And I'm so very grateful for the time we had together.
Hello, my name is Tim. I was one of Mike's friends in Monteverde. And just being in this memorial and the one we had a month ago here, basically it's just left me with just knowing that there was so much more to Mike that that I could have gotten to know with more time. I've learned a whole lot about him, and I guess consistent with what everyone has said. In the time we had together, basically we were in a spiritual sharing group of my wife Elena, who's here with me, and Mike and one other friend that met once a month. And through that, Mike knew that I was in a stressful job and probably needed some support. So consistent with what everyone has said, he apparently looked for a place where he could be of help and started inviting me out to lunch once a week. And so I didn't get to know Mike near as much as most of you who have spoken, I'm sure, because we only had at most an hour or two a week together for a few years, with sometimes long breaks when he was gone or when he wasn't well. But I'm just, I think I'm just left in awe of how much more there was to Mike than I suspected. He was so quiet, and he sometimes told me quite a bit about himself and his his life, but most of the time he asked me questions, and so I didn't get to know him as much as I could have. And I'm so glad for all the other things that I've heard from you all.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing. Please join us across the road in the Green Schoolhouse for a light lunch. All of you are welcome to come. If you didn't get a chance to give a message that you wanted to give, please share it with people at the schoolhouse. Ongoing sharing. We featured deviled eggs, which Mike often made for many occasions. Scientifically, and they're not scientifically made, but they're. And apple cider, which he always liked in the fall, and which he always bought for such a meeting for Christmas Eve service. Please go in peace.
And we're gonna share at the lunch slideshow, a silent slideshow of pictures of Mike's life. That slideshow link is included in his obituary that I believe has been shared with everyone in the Zoom meeting. I'll look it up and take it into the chat before we close it out too, in case anybody needs it.